Once upon a time, a young girl named Little Red Riding Hood lived at the edge of a dense, magical forest. She wore a bright red cloak, gifted by her grandmother. One day, her mother asked her to bring a basket of treats to her grandmother's house. The forest was alive with glowing mushrooms, singing birds, and mischievous squirrels. Little Red was excited, but reminded herself of her mother's warning: stay on the path and beware of strangers. She nodded and began her journey. As she skipped along the path, Little Red marveled at the beauty of the forest. She picked flowers and admired the sunlight filtering through the leaves. But suddenly, a deep voice called out from behind a tree. Out stepped a tall, sly wolf with sharp eyes and a friendly smile. "Where are you off to, little one?" he asked. Little Red, feeling a bit uneasy, replied, "I'm bringing treats to my grandmother." The wolf's eyes gleamed as he heard about Little Red's grandmother. "Ah, such a kind girl," he said. "I bet your grandmother will be thrilled." He then pointed to a shortcut through the trees. Little Red, curious about the shortcut, decided to trust the wolf's advice. She ventured off the main path and into the trees, not realizing the wolf's cunning plan. Meanwhile, the wolf dashed ahead on the main trail. The wolf arrived at grandmother's house well before Little Red did. He knocked on the door, disguising his voice as Little Red's. "Come in, dear," grandmother called, unaware of the visitor. With a sly grin, the wolf entered and quickly hid grandmother in a closet. Then, he dressed up in her clothes, slipping on her nightcap and glasses. He climbed into bed, pretending to be grandmother. A little while later, Little Red finally reached the house, thrilled to see her grandmother. She noticed something strange about her grandmother lying in bed. But she shrugged and stepped closer. "Grandmother," she said, "what big ears you have." The wolf replied, "All the better to hear you with, my dear." Little Red blinked, puzzled but too polite to question further. "And grandmother," Little Red continued, "what big eyes you have." The wolf chuckled and said, "All the better to see you with, my dear." Little Red began to feel a bit uneasy. "Grandmother," she whispered, "what big teeth you have." The wolf couldn't hold back any longer and exclaimed, "All the better to eat you with." He leapt out of bed with a howl. Little Red screamed, but just as the wolf was about to pounce, a loud knock came at the door. It was a nearby woodcutter, who'd heard the commotion and rushed over to help. The woodcutter burst in, scaring the wolf, who backed away nervously. With one swing of his axe, he made the wolf flee from the house and out into the woods, never to be seen again. Grateful and relieved, Little Red ran to the closet and freed her grandmother, who was safe and sound. They hugged each other tightly, promising to be more careful in the future. As they sat together with tea and treats, Little Red thanked the woodcutter and promised never to stray from the path again. From that day on, she remembered her mother's advice: